All right, let's take a look at the Electoral College map. So far, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has 238 Electoral College votes compared to 213 for President Trump. 270 needed to win, of course. Several key swing states remain in play, including Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, and Wisconsin.
Let's take a look at the popular vote. According to the Associated Press, Biden has more than 69 million votes. That's more votes for president than any other candidate in U.S. election history. President Trump has more than 67 million votes. According to the U.S. Election Project, the 2020 election had the highest voter turnout rate since the election of 1900.
All right, we're going to have analysis this morning from Republican and Democratic political consultants. Joining us right now is Matt Klink.
He is a political consultant and Republican strategist. Matt, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Jessica?
We're doing good. As we reported, Matt, there are several key states still too close to call for either President Trump or Joe Biden. However, last night, the president, after Joe Biden spoke, president maybe an hour or so later came out and falsely claimed victory, and that there was election fraud going on. What are your thoughts on that?
He took what was a pretty successful election night. He's still in the game. He had won all the states with the exception of one that he was expected to win. And he did what he always does. He stepped on his message. And I mean, the reality is that his path to victory is very narrow. I think that it clearly runs through Pennsylvania. And the challenge that I know that he has said is that every vote should be counted that was legally voted. And that's where I think the definition is going to turn, because the Democrats apparently want to count votes that are received after 8 p.m. on election night, which apparently is not allowed by Pennsylvania law. So I think that's going to be messy. But Joe Biden is hoping that if he wins Georgia, that it becomes irrelevant at that point, because he has more than enough votes he needs to win the Electoral College.
The president also making a suggestion that somehow the Supreme Court might engage on this to stop the counting of some of the mail-in votes. Clearly, that wouldn't be appropriate. People who have mailed in their votes, those are as valid as the people who have stood in line at a polling place. So does he have the standing to make such a statement? And do you think this is going to end up in the courts?
Well, the answer is yes, it will end up in the courts. The term that I hear people using is that the Republicans are looking for a case to latch onto, meaning that you can't just say, I want to go to the Supreme Court, and because you're the president, they just open their doors and hear your case. That you have to work your way through either state or federal court, and ultimately you would wind up in the United States Supreme Court if they choose to take the case. But Pennsylvania's Secretary of State is sequestering ballots, particularly those that were received after 8 p.m. Because apparently Pennsylvania law says that those votes shouldn't count. So again, that's where the arguments are going to occur. That may only be one place, though, because the election law differs by state.
Matt, we want to get your take as far as what the biggest surprise of the night in President Trump's race, in particular, to those 270 electoral votes. I know one thing many people saying the polls were wrong as we headed into election night, just like in 2016. I mean, this is a much tighter race than the polls predicted.
Absolutely. And, I think the biggest surprise of the night, my master of the obvious statement for the day, is Arizona, which we had suspected that it was becoming more of a purple state. It now has 2 Democratic senators. It looks like it's going to deliver for Vice President Biden. I think what is fascinating is Nevada is really close. I mean, Nevada, I'm looking at the numbers, there's only 7,600 votes that separate 2 candidates, and Nevada will not release any vote totals today. So we won't know Nevada's final return until tomorrow. But, Frank, I heard you say that the vice president is now ahead in Michigan. I think that that's just Wayne County or the Detroit area coming in. And similarly, I'm hearing that in Wisconsin, it's the Milwaukee area, which is, again, heavily Democrat. So I think that the path to victory for Joe Biden looks a lot straighter than does Donald Trump's, but we're not going to know for a couple days.
Let's talk about the balance of power in Congress, specifically the Senate. A couple of you mentioned one of them, the Arizona has picked up has flipped to a Democrat, Colorado as well. Some people are saying it's over. I think it's still underway. How is this going to end up in the Senate?
I think that the Republicans hold power, that they keep a slim 51-49 majority. Senator Tom Tillis is going to get reelected in North Carolina. It looks like Susan Collins, in spite of millions of money from outside the state, is going to keep Maine. Interestingly enough, because of a quirky Georgia election law and no candidate getting 50% of the vote, there will be a runoff election in Georgia on the 5th of January, and that seat could literally be for all of the marbles. So there will be massive money spent there. But if you add the two Republican candidates' vote total, it well exceeds 50%. And I would expect that the incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler will keep that seat.
South Carolina, Lindsey Graham survived without much of an issue. That, once again, seemed to go against the money that was poured into South Carolina and the polling that suggested it was much tighter.
Well, the money, the polling, and I think that the mainstream news media, they aspired to have James Harrison even threaten the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Lindsey Graham simply crushed him. And I mean, it wasn't even close. That race was declared fairly early on in the night. And I think that that's an example, like the Democrats flirting with Texas, that it just is not the reality yet. I mean, I think ultimately, as the population switches and it becomes more purple, that states like South Carolina and Texas may have some more Democrats elected, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, Matt, how late were you up last night? Just taking my own poll.
I went to bed about 1:30, but I also have 2 statewide ballot measures that I'm working on. So I was, after the presidential race was all big shut down, I started watching those.
Well, Matt, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Matt Klink, owner and president of Klink Campaigns, specializing in public affairs and strategic communications. For more information, you can check out their website and follow him on Twitter.